check that. Let me send the link to my friend Daniel, because I'm sure he'll want to listen. Hello, everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. Give me just a second, guys. I am taking care of a quick job. I got to send Daniel the link to this stream so that he can watch it now or later, because he very much enjoys these videos and I want him to be able to continue to enjoy them. Let's see, got that. Copy link. And sent. All right. You should be good to go. Hello, everybody. Happy Easter. Hope you guys have had a good Easter. Let's go ahead and close out the poll. See who won this little contest. And the winner is Shogun of Crime with 30% of the votes. Tempest Blade and Monster Club tied with 25% apiece. And the Tale of Tomoki with just 20%. Well, that's okay. That's pretty close, all things considered. Well, welcome, guys. I know that this is a weird day to do it. Most of y'all are not used to me doing it on Sunday. You prefer it on Monday, and I apologize. The reason for the change is because on Monday it is April Fool's Day, and that means that For Honor is doing their April Fool's Day event. Now, For Honor doesn't do this like Rainbow Six Siege does it, where they do it like for a week or two. They do it for only one day. There's only one day to enjoy this April Fool's event. So Havoc and I are planning on gaming and streaming it tomorrow, but that would mean that I can't do my reading stream. So I decided I would do my reading stream when I got home tonight. Now you might think, well, Raven, why didn't you do it Tuesday? Because this week I might end up having more shifts at work, and I can't promise that I'll be available Tuesday night to do it. So I thought, let's just do it Sunday night instead. And that is the plan. So, without further ado, since it is 9:13, we just got home. Like, literally, we just got home. We ordered pizza. Lark picked it up, brought it back. We are eating while we do this. So, we're going to go ahead and get started with the reading. So, let's go ahead and do this. As always, we're going to start with the Tempest Blade. We left off on Chapter 8. I think you're really going to like what comes up in Chapters 8 and 9. I think you guys are really going to like this. So, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the good stuff. So, pardon me, I've still got a bit of a stuffy nose. Take a quick swig of my Gatorade. And let's do it. Tempest Blade, Chapter 8, written July 13th, 2018. I sat quietly at the counter to the bar. It was the early morning and my sword was strapped to my side. I was geared up and ready to go back to work again, patrolling the forest beyond town. I wasn't excited about today's work because I'd be gone until the late evening and likely wouldn't be back until after Anya had gone to bed. But it wasn't like I could just ignore my responsibilities either. I glanced over as the door to the kitchen opened and out walked little Anya. Sorry. Wearing an apron and little working dress. A bandana was wrapped over her hair and it helped to hide her ears. Her wide eyes watched the tray she carried carefully as it was loaded with 4 mugs of ale. She scurried out to one of the tables to deliver the drinks. "She's a hard worker," Gaius muttered, smoking his pipe next to me. "Never complains and does what she's told better than some of my veteran staff. Never thought I'd see the day you go and hire a little kid, let alone a Lothari. Don't push your luck." After the incident with Anya running off and getting bullied, Gaius decided it would be a good idea to keep Anya occupied and chose to hire her on as an assistant. Essentially, it meant she would do any chores he asked her to do around the inn, such as collecting laundry, serving drinks, peeling potatoes, and just about anything else he needed from her. It was easy work, but it kept her busy and happy most of the time. I just looked down at her as she set the mugs down in front of the guests. "Look, Ethan," Gaius grumbled, "it's really none of my business, but you can't hide that girl forever. She needs to be a kid." "Well, what would you have me do? It's not as if I can change what she is and take off that bandana or cut her hair. You do know that as she gets older, she'll obtain more traits of her people, right? The sharp canines, the possibility of a tail, and if she's from a primary line of Lothari from the royal family, then she'll grow horns, too. Then you're just really screwed. And, inevitably, she'll start gaining a proficiency with runes, if she doesn't already have some. I know that, Gaius. I know, I said. You don't need to keep reminding me of how dangerous it is, but I'll think of something. Just give me some time. I stood up, finishing my drink, and prepared to leave. Hey! I froze and spun to see Gaius walking around the corner towards me. He held out a piece of parchment and shoved it in my hands. Look, I found this nailed outside the inn this morning, and, well, I don't got any use for it, but I thought you might. I looked over the parchment and saw what it was. It was a notice about the arrival of the circus in the neighboring town. A circus, I guess. It's large, crowded, kids love it there. She'll meld right in, and with all the costumed characters there, the last thing anyone will look for on her will be her ears. Though she should wear bows or something just to be safe. But why would it... Look, it ain't my business what you do or don't do with that brat, Gaius snapped defensively, but it breaks my heart to think that any child would grow up without having been to just one circus. We both stared at each other for a moment, and I saw a flash of empathy in his eyes. Despite his prejudice, I could see the concern there. He'd grown to like her, but I didn't bring that up. I was just glad that he was willing to help. I appreciate it, Gaius. I sighed, shaking his hand and then stuffing the parchment away in my coat. I looked down at Anya, who took notice of me leaving. She picked up her tray and quickly ran to me to say goodbye.
Ethan, she asked, you go now?
Yeah, I have to go, I answered. I'll be back tonight. I then paused and pulled out the parchment to show Anya. Anya, does this interest you? She stared at the paper but didn't say anything. The thought occurred to me that Anya probably couldn't read. It's a circus.
What's a circus? She asked.
A circus is, it's a big tent full of actors and stuntmen, and she just tilted her head as if trying to process my words. She was like a curious puppy, and like a puppy, there was no way I could make her understand through words alone. It's a lot of fun.
Fun?
She asked, now a bit excited.
We go?
If you'd like.
All right, she beamed. We go to circus with Ethan.
I nodded and ruffled her hair until her bandana before turning to leave. You work hard, all right? I'll be back after sundown. With a final wave, I opened the door and walked out to the morning mist.
Bye, Ethan,
she called after me. I nearly choked up at her farewell. Her little voice seemed to follow me everywhere I went. Such a sweet kid. I almost hoped Maverus didn't find anything on her parents. It felt like agony to think of letting her go. But even if he didn't, what could I do? I hated to confess, but the words of Gaius continued to resound in my heart. As Anya grew up, she would become harder and harder to conceal. Lothari are a diverse people physically. All Lothari children start off with the same pointed ears, wide eyes, and tan skin of their people, but as time goes by, they'll develop other traits of their people. Some Lothari have tails, some have horns or antlers, all have sharp teeth, and all develop a familiarity with the language of ruins. Pac Maverus used to have a tail, and few in the army knew this about him, but he'd had it removed so that he could more easily blend into human society. It didn't bother him. He had no real interest in Lothari purity or such nonsense, so it never bothered him. But what about Anya? She wasn't like Maverus. She might like to keep those traits given to her by her parents, and how could I hide her if in a few years she was growing a pair of deer antlers? I wanted to put those thoughts out of my mind, but the more I tried, the more I realized that this was something I simply couldn't ignore. I discussed it with Maverus when he returned, and when I called him, but now that didn't matter. What mattered was work, and of course, the circus. I wanted to wait a day to take Anya to the circus. I needed to be rested and my injuries from work patched up properly, but the next evening came all too soon. I found myself walking with Anya down to the circus big top tent as she ran ahead of me excitedly. "Don't go too far, kid," I called after her. She slowed down, but her eyes never tore away from the massive tent in front of us. There was a crowd of people beginning to form. Children ran back and forth between stalls, stands, and games. Anya always stayed just a few feet from me, but was bouncing from foot to foot, longing to investigate the games and stalls ahead of her.
Ethan?
She squeaked excitedly.
I play game?
Go ahead, I nodded. She beamed and took out 2 gold coins, her pay for yesterday's work. It made me kind of proud to see her making money and being productive. She stopped at a ring and bottle game and began systematically working to toss little rings onto standing bottles. I watched her with a grin as she tossed once, twice, and a third time. She honestly wasn't too bad, but her aim was simply a few inches off. If she released a little sooner, she'd hit the center of the massive bottles. "Anya," I called before she released her last ring. "Let it go a bit sooner."
Sooner?
"Yes, quick," I explained. Anya nodded and obeyed. As I predicted, her ring flew and landed on the bottle just off the center. As a reward, the stall owner passed her a doll of sorts. She took it and hugged it tightly. The stall owner glanced up and saw me, and his smile turned to a frown. She yours? I'm taking care of her, I answered. Poor kid. Raised by a traitor. He clearly knew who I was, despite not being from our town. Thank you for coming to our town, I growled, placing my hand behind Anya's back and escorting her away. As we walked, Anya looked up at me and blinked curiously.
Ethan? What, traitor?
She asked. Traitor. It means Dernma. I spat the word and she recognized it. Her eyes widened in surprise and shook her head.
No, Ethan no Dernma.
Shh, don't speak Lithari, I whispered. And no, I'm not a traitor, but to a lot of people, I am. Anya, a lot of people think I'm a traitor because of something I did long ago. I placed my hands on her shoulders and smiled. Do you think I'm a traitor?
No, she cried. Ethan is good. Ethan no traitor.
Then if you think I'm not a traitor, then that's all that matters to me. I rubbed her head and adjusted her bandana to make sure that her ears were well covered. Now, let's go see that big tent, huh? Anya nodded and began walking to the tent. I followed close, a small fire in my soul stirred by her words. I wasn't a traitor to her. I was a good man. I don't know why hearing that from her was so important, but it was. It's what I needed to hear. I personally had never been to a circus as a kid. I spent most of my childhood training in the ways of the sword and following my father and mother around with tools and equipment for crafting swords, and of course other items in the blacksmith shop. I could see the appeal though. Clowns and jesters running around the center of the tent making hilarious fools of themselves for the joy of the crowd. Jugglers and acrobats using their talents to wow the audience. Anya was enraptured with the performance. I was just so happy to see her smiling. She seemed to vanish into the crowd of children, melding in like she were one of them. It made me a little uneasy, though. The fear that her bandana could come off and expose her. Anya, don't go too far, I called. She didn't seem to hear me, though I felt that she wouldn't leave my sight anyway. I just kept my arms crossed and observed her. I saw one man walk out with a sword and held it out ready to swallow it down his throat. I just laughed to myself. The sword was obviously fake. I knew quality steel when I saw it, but of course the audience wouldn't know that. Although the acrobat girl doing cartwheels on a tightrope, that was impressive. I found myself enjoying the show despite myself. Never thought I'd see you in a place like this. I turned my gaze behind me and blinked. Don't acknowledge me. If the crowd finds out I'm here, they might have a fit. Makes me wonder why you'd risk coming to meet me here, Pac, I hissed. Pac took a step forward so I could see him wearing a cowl over his head and a robe on to keep his body hidden. He grunted and looked on at the performance as if enjoying the show with me. I had to risk it. I didn't know when I could get in touch with you again before. You know. Sarandinen giving you trouble? I asked. Not me, but they sure are causing a stir. That's not what I needed to talk to you about. I found out who the girl's parents are. Well, spill it. Who are they? Not here, Ethan. He hissed urgently. I paused and dared to glance at him, surprised. I'd never heard such emotion from Pac Mavris before. Was that fear in his voice? Are her parents important? More than you'd think. Meet me outside after the show. With that, Mavris stepped backwards into the crowd and vanished. I stood still, amazed by his sudden appearance and even more anxious to know who on earth Anya's parents were. But for now, I just watched for Anya and ensure she had the time of her little life. The show came to a close at around midnight, and everyone in the circus was tired. Children that had once bounced up and down with joy were now slowly staggering next to their parents, worn out and exhausted from the joys of the circus. Anya was, of course, no different. Fumbling next to me as I walked her down the road back towards the inn. She might need a day off tomorrow, I thought. I'd talk to Gaius about it in the morning. Did you enjoy yourself, Anya? I asked.
It's so fun. Circus is great.
She laughed sleepily. I'm glad. Now hold on to that doll. Don't you lose it. I instructed as I noticed her gripping on the doll was slipping from fatigue. As we finally got back to the inn, I pat her rear for her to hurry inside. Hold on, guys. Got an ad. Let me get through it. There we go. I'll be inside soon, okay?
Ethan not come inside?
No, I need to check on something. I reached out and rubbed her tiny cheek, smiling at her shimmering eyes. I promise I won't leave you.
All right.
She smiled, seemingly pleased with my answer. As she waddled through the door, struggling to stay upright, I turned and walked towards the forest to meet with Mavris, to find out who she really was. I thought it would take longer to find him in the dark, but he wasn't too far into the woods at all. I saw his silhouette in the night like a patient shadow, the moon etching out his body clearly. I approached and leaned on a tree next to him and crossed my arms patiently. All right, Pac, you've kept me in suspense long enough, I think. Who is Anya? I demanded. Ethan, you have no idea just what you picked up in those woods. That girl, Maverick sighed. It took me a little bit of digging, but I found out everything about her. And I know why her mother was killed by the Serendainan. Good grief, Maverick. Is she the daughter of the Lothari king? Worse than that, Ethan, Maverick groaned. Pac, Anya. Anya is the daughter of Elijah Eridan. I nearly fell to my knees. What? You heard me. You're lying to me, Maverick. You have to be lying. I can't lie to you, Ethan. I wouldn't even be telling you this if I wasn't sure of it. Eridan's daughter was named Anya. Anya Eridan. I leaned against the tree, my breath failing me, and I had to stop my body from shaking. How could that be? How could... I cried, struggling to keep myself upright. That little girl, the child I'd picked up from the woods and had cared for the last 3 weeks, was the daughter of Eridan. Ethan, you have to get rid of her. You can't cling to her. Every day she's in your care, you invite destruction. I can't do that, Maverick. She's just a child. I'll take her away. I'll leave her in a sympathetic family house. I won't let her fall to harm. But you mustn't keep her any longer. No, Pac. I can't do that, Ethan. She is the daughter of Elijah Eridan, the most feared Lothari general during the Great War, and the man you killed on the bridge of Kaidram. And that is chapter 8. Let me take a quick bite to eat real quick while y'all decide how y'all felt about that. All right. Let us continue. Oh, I totally forgot, didn't I? I forgot to share with you guys Jay's images, didn't I? Let me go ahead and share those. So, as some of you may know, my buddy Jay draws a lot of art for the channel. And when I was working on Tempest Blade, he drew a picture for each chapter I had written. Now, he hasn't gotten to add any new ones lately, but he did draw some up to this point. So, I will share with you those little bits of art. So, for that last chapter, it was this image. I shared it in the last stream, but I will share it again. You can see the cloak image of Pac in the background. You can see our boy Ethan standing against the tree, and you can see Anya just having a great time at the circus. You know, you just gotta love that. Gotta love her. All right. Now that's the picture from this chapter. The next chapter's image is this one. Raven, when you're done here with stories on this show, you should edit them into audiobooks for the second channel. No, I'm probably not going to do that for the simple reason that no one listens to my stories on the second channel. All right, and this is the image you drew for this chapter. I'll leave it up while we read this. All right. Take another bite real quick. All right, here we go. Tempest Blade Chapter 9, written August 9th, 2018. Kydram was the name of a massive bridge that stood over the ravine of Kareth. It had led from the lands known by the Empire and the Lothari-governed woodlands. During the war, it was a key strategic point for both sides. If the Lothari could hold the bridge, then they could continue allowing refugees into Lothari lands and continue to allow supplies and resources into the mass within. But if the Empire should take it, they could cripple supply runs to Lothari allies and blockade any attempts for large military maneuvers among the Lothari. For this reason, the Lothari soldiers had entrusted the defense of the bridge and the towns around it to not one, not two, but 3 garrisons of their strongest fighters. It could not be lost. But it would be. The Empire wanted a swift end to the war, so they dispatched a legion to the location as well as 3 members of the Silver Corps. I was one of them. Ethan Hawke, the Tempest Blade, they had called me. The human swordsman with a blade that could cut with the speed of wind and could leave whole squads in shreds. I never liked the name, but I could hardly stop soldiers from whispering the title, so it stuck. But the battlefield had little respect for titles. Actions mattered far more, and the Lothari's actions were quite audacious, to say the least. The Lothari launched heavy resistance against the Legion, harassing units that broke off and cutting off supply lines to try and starve us out. But it was useless. Their magic runes that powered their arrows simply couldn't match an onslaught of machine gun fire. To their credit, they did kill the Silver Corps warrior Nathan the Whispering Death. Supposedly he was some serial killer who joined the Corps to earn his freedom. Needless to say, he was no major loss in my eyes. But the outcome of the battle was still inevitable. The Lothari were on the retreat, and we knew it. I took a detachment of soldiers with me to pursue a fleeing squadron of Lothari soldiers as they made their way to the bridge Kydram. The soldiers were falling behind. The harsh winds that ran through the ravine below were frightening, and a false move could send one falling off the old wooden bridge. I went on ahead, in pursuit of the enemy. One of the soldiers fell, stumbling from the blowing wind and collapsing on the wooden bridge. I moved in, raising my sword to strike down the Lothari. He let out a cry of fright, but I couldn't let it stop me. I had a job to do and an empire to defend. Though there were times I felt I was on the wrong side, but I couldn't worry about that. I struck. But no sooner had my sword come down than I felt it being stopped in mid-air by a saber. I looked just in time to see a second saber swing at my neck. I swiftly jumped back, parrying the strike and readying myself for the attacker. And it was then that I saw him for the first time. A pair of deer antlers protruded from long black hair and eyes as blue as the sea. He wore the garments and armor of a Lothari officer, and he held a long saber in both hands. Upon them were a pair of runes that I did not know, but I knew him by his speed and the way he held those blades. He had a smile on his face as he glared at me. The Lothari I had nearly killed clambered away for the safety of the other side. Elijah Eridan of the Dancing Swords, I noted. You're the general of this front? That I am, he answered without even a hint of an accent. His language skills were impressive. And judging by your black sword, you're the Tempest, Ethan Hawke, correct? I heard of your previous victories. It is an honor to meet an accomplished swordsman like yourself. He raised his sword in a cross mark over his chest and saluted, as if we were about to duel, which I had a feeling was his intent. You know that we can't just walk away from this, Eridan, I pointed out. I know that. So I propose an offer, Tempest. He readied his blades again and grinned. Let us have an honorable duel between swordsmen. Nothing more and nothing less. Eridan, you do realize that even if you beat me, the bridge is lost. You can't defeat the entire legion coming on behind me. Yes, the odds are against us. But I will fight anyway. If I do not fight for my people, even when hope is gone, then what right do I have to call myself a warrior? He asked. And besides, I see this more as a chance to test myself against a worthy opponent. And for the first time since I joined this war effort, I smiled. I genuinely smiled. Elijah Eridan was famous for his skill in twin sword fighting. Stories said he cut down 30 men without taking a single injury and all dancing as if on parade. The chance to fight him had me excited as well. All right, Elijah Eridan. I accept. I readied my sword and the world paused as we moved. He was like water itself. His body moved with fluid grace, the likes of which I'd never seen before. My strike came close to him, always just along his coat or his hair, but he'd deflect and slide behind to stab at me. I was forced to watch my back as well as my front, as he could so quickly move to my blind spots. I could not simply stand still, but dance, and dance I did. Our swords, like flurries of bird wings, sang in the air as wind whistled by their shimmering steel. My black blade crossed and parried the twin steel swords that Elijah wielded. I'd never felt such a rush. Each step I took forward, he sidestepped around me. Each slash he made at me, I returned with a deflecting block, and then an angular downstrike. We never stayed in one place. He knew better than to give me such an opening. But at the same time, I wouldn't allow him to have full access of his arms. Always staying in close so he couldn't use his circular reach. But the entire battle, our smiles never fading. This was a swordsman's duel, and I'd never felt such exhilaration. I forgot about the war, about the battle, about the bridge. Just being lost in this dance with such an accomplished fighter was more than enough for me. "General Aridon!" The cry carried it with both of us looking up. 2 Lothari were running down the bridge with spears and shields. "We'll back you up! Stay back, both of you!" he shouted. But in that moment, I lost my focus, and the wind caught me. I cried out in shock as I was thrown to the side into the ravine of the bridge. I felt the weight of gravity claim me as I tumbled over and into the ravine. I screamed in terror as I felt the rush of death approach me. "Hold!" I lurched with a stop and felt a grip on my wrist. I looked up, dangling, seeing Elijah Aridon, my enemy, holding my arm with as much force as he could. "Hang on, Hawk!" He then yanked hard and pulled me back onto the bridge. I clambered up, gripping my sword tightly and looking up at Aridon, who was also breathing heavily, as if he too had been hanging on by a thread. The 2 Lothari who had come to help him stared dumbstruck as Aridon had just saved my life. Aridon turned to me and smiled apologetically. "Forgive me, Hawk. I couldn't let you die like that." "But why?" I demanded. "I'm your enemy. I'm a Silver Corps warrior." "You are so much more than that." He raised his blades again. "It is said when you cross swords with a man, you know their heart. And Ethan Hawke, I have seen your heart. You are not a murderer or a monster like the rumors claim you to be. You are a true swordsman, a great warrior, and I wish to finish this duel with the same honor and distinction we began it with." I felt stunned by his offer, by his kindness. I didn't even want to raise my sword to him now. I could barely find the reason. How could I duel my savior? "I can't fight you, Elijah. Not after you saved me." "Why do you fight this war, Ethan?" he asked. "For my village, for my hometown. It needs protecting, and I volunteered to spare its citizens of the draft." "I understand that," Elijah commented. "I imagine you are weary of this conflict." "I am," I admitted. "We both know where this war will end. And I'm sorry." "As am I, Hawk. As am I. I wish there were more in the Empire like you. Perhaps peace wouldn't be such a dim hope." "Surrender, Aridon. Surrender and offer yourself to us. I'll see to it that you're taken care of and return to your home." Elijah laughed. "I'm sure you would try that. I'm sure. But no, it's as you said before, Hawk. You and I both know how this will end." "Hawk! Ethan Hawke! Reinforcements have come!" I spun around to see a small garrison of soldiers from the Empire running out with guns ready. I spun to face them. "Lower your guns this instant!" I roared. "Lower the damned guns!" But sir, even if one of you fires a shot, I'll execute them myself." I bellowed at them. I then turned to face Elijah. "Please, Aridon, don't do this." "I don't want to do this." "Neither do I, Tempest," he answered. "But we must. You know as well as I. Even if I were to defeat you, these men behind you would not allow me to flee here alive. Elijah, let me die in my own way, Hawk. Let me die in battle with a worthy warrior." He didn't wait for my response. He charged me, and I had no choice but to react. Our blades crashed again, but it was more furious now. Elijah was holding nothing back. It was as if he were daring me to react fully, to give him everything I had. We crossed blades and sparks flew from our steel as we struck back and forth like battering rams. I gripped my teeth through tears. "Don't do it!" I hissed. He didn't listen. He swung his sword up for the killing blow, and I responded with my own. I rushed in and impaled him through the chest on my sword. We froze in place as blood dribbled from his mouth, and he smiled again as his eyes glazed over. He'd let me kill him. He allowed me this final strike. "What a fine warrior, Ethan Hawke," he whispered weakly, leaning forward and dropping his sabers. "Thank you for a magnificent duel." "Why?" I grimaced. "Why did you just let me kill you? You could have won." "It's how it must end," he whispered. "My people need to see the uselessness of this war. I am their favored general.
their prized commander. If I die, my hope is they will lose the heart to keep fighting this endless battle. It must end here, Hawk. It must. It must. Stay with me, I snapped, lowering his body down and pulling out my sword. I placed my hand on his wound to try and stop the bleeding. I die, so this war will end, he kept whispering. So my little girl can grow up to have a future. A life. Stay alive, you bastard, I snapped. Don't die for her. You have to live for her. I did live for her, Hawk. But I die for my people, he smiled sadly. Though, I do wish I could see her again. Damn it, stop talking like that and just... I couldn't finish my demand as he placed a bloody hand on my shoulder and closed his eyes. Dios Eferim, he whispered. I knew the phrase, and it froze me in place. It was a testament of loyalty and of brotherhood, of devotion. It was not just a thank you or a simple gratitude statement. It was so much more than that, and he'd said it to me. I gripped his hand as he breathed his last breath, and I stared at his body, feeling the joy of the fight before and the thrill of victory all disappear. I was left beyond broken. He won! One of the men cried. The Tempest beat their general! We got those bastards on the run now for sure! Hurry up and finish the job! Cut off his head! All of you shut your mouths! I roared furiously. I picked up the body of the fallen general and tried to hold back my own tears. We're going back! What? But sir! I'm tired, I replied. And I need to deliver the body. The soldiers all stared at me as if I had lost my mind. We had the winning momentum. We could easily pursue them, but this drive to fight that I'd had was gone. My longing to win was history. I didn't want any more to do with this war. Elijah Aridon gave his life to see it end. The proclamation and announcement throughout the empire would be that of a great victory for our cause. The mighty Tempest Blade slayed the greatest general of the Lothari forces. I was a hero, the great warrior who brought us a step closer to an end to the war. But I took no pride in it. I did not celebrate. I allowed my fame to grow quietly, telling no one of the true events that took place on that bridge. I only watched silently for what the Lothari would do. I prayed Elijah's sacrifice would work and they would lose heart and desire peace over war. And it almost worked. We had come so close to an early end to this war. But as with many things, the winds of fate change course, and what could have been was never meant to be. The arrogance and pride that came with that victory infected the Legion, and it led them to make a decision that would destroy any chance of peace. I wept for days, mourning the sacrifice of a greater hero and warrior than I ever could be. And I never thought I would ever repay Elijah's kindness to me. Until now.
And that was chapter 9. Pretty cool. Fun chapter. All right. Well, let's take down that picture. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading that. Let me know in the chat what you think. Would love your thoughts, if you have any. We'll put this up because we're going to read Tomaki next. Yay, Tomaki. What caused everyone to turn on Ethan? You will learn soon. That's later on in the story. I do reveal what happened. I read his comment. I responded to it. In the next chapter, you'll learn why Anya being his daughter is a death sentence. Raven, I can see you did it for honor story mode. Clever. There was a little bit of inspiration there, but honestly, I got it from something else, but I don't want to talk about it yet. Yeah, I love Tempest Blade. It's a good one. All right, well, we don't have a whole lot of time, so let's keep going. We are now doing the Tale of Tomaki, and we are finally getting to the big battle. You know what I'm saying? We're on chapter 21. Let's get going. I'm excited for this one. The Tale of Tomaki, chapter 21, written May 21st, 2016. I flew towards the school, a big grin on my face. Last night I felt like I'd won my greatest victory. It was a stepping stone in my life. I'd chased off that worthless Komodo and I'd earned a kiss on the cheek from Victoria. Somehow everything seemed to be finally going my way. I'd happily eat lunch with Victoria today. I wanted to talk to her more and maybe get another kiss. I glanced down towards the school only to see something that shocked me. The faculty and staff, as well as the majority of the student body, were all standing around out front. Swarming crowds of people were there, all buzzing and talking amongst themselves. There were police cars gradually rolling up and buses stopping to load people on. My optimism began to fade, and I gently descended to the ground near one of the teachers. I didn't know him, but I'd seen him in the school before, so maybe he knew something. "Oh, what's going on here?" I asked him. "Oh, Tomaki, thank goodness!" the teacher cried. The sound of my name seemed to cause a stir. Students and staff all turned in my direction, and the nearby police all started moving towards me and to brief me. The constant chatter and babbling was getting on my nerves, so I eventually had to push my way through the crowd to the nearest police officer. I asked him the same question and focused on his face to hear his response. It's Mamaragon," he grunted. "About half an hour ago, he just walked up to the school and knocked out the SRO and then commandeered the school intercom, telling everyone inside to evacuate the building or else." Mamaragon! I felt my energy spike at the mention of his name. "We got aerial reconnaissance. Visual saw him in the football stadium behind the school. We think he may have hostages, but we can't verify," the police officer continued. I didn't need to try and fill in the blanks here. He wanted me, and he would hurt people to get me. Time I put an end to this monster. "I'll deal with it," I explained. "Tomaki, with all due respect, you don't know what he's like." "I'll be careful, sir, but I'm not ignoring this." I then launched into the air and flew for the football stadium, prepared to face the leader of the triads. Jada awoke to the sound of knocking. She groaned and rolled over, checking her alarm clock, only to bolt up with a start. "Hell, why didn't my clock go off?" she cried, scrambling out of bed to get dressed as the door to her apartment banged louder. Hold on," she cried, throwing on a hoodie and pants before opening the door. "Sorry, I'm running Victoria?" Victoria stood at the door looking incredibly worried, her hair tied back and her eyes brimming with tears. "Jada, thank goodness, are you okay?" "Sure, I just overslept. What are you doing here? What's gotten into..." "Jada, have you heard about anything? Do you know what's happening?" Victoria asked. "Happening? What are you talking about, Vicky? It's your brother. Marcus is attacking the school." At this, Jada's face went from confused to furious. "You bitch. What the hell did you just say?" "Marcus ain't no criminal." "Just turn on the news," Victoria ordered. Jada didn't budge as her lips curled. "You want to judge him too, huh? Just like everyone else? You don't know what he had to go through for me and my family. Just because he's a mutant, just because he's not like us, he's got to be some kind of freak?" "Jada, your brother's Mamaragon," Victoria cried. "Why, you lying?" "Jada, turn on the news," Victoria screamed at her. Jada cursed loudly, but then turned and marched to the living room, ripping the remote control off the coffee table and turning on the TV. Instantly, the black box burst with light and shone a helicopter image of the football stadium behind the school, with a news anchorwoman talking at length about what was happening. And there, with the camera zoomed in on his face, was Mamaragon. And his face made Jada's expression shift dramatically. "Marcus," she hissed. "That's Marcus. Mamaragon. He's taken the school hostage," Victoria said. "But no, that's not him. It's..." Jada was frantically trying to figure this out. How could that be Marcus on the screen? It couldn't be. He worked in the city. He always left early. He only came to her school to pick her up. Why was he there? As she looked at him, his face looked so strange. It didn't carry that same warmth and comfort she loved to see in him. It was harsh. It was cold. It was expectant. How could that be him? "Why is he there?" Jada cried. "I came to get you so you could tell me," Victoria explained. "I didn't realize it was him until Warren told me yesterday." "But he never even told me about this," Jada cried. Victoria moved quickly to comfort her, but Jada threw her hand out to knock her aside. "I gotta talk to him." "That is a bad idea, Jada. I need to.
I know I can get the truth about this. Let me just go. Let him explain it to me. He'll talk to me, Jada urged, running to the door. Jada, wait, he is dangerous. He is not dangerous. He is my brother, Jada cried, tears running down her face. As she turned to shout at Victoria, her eyes went back to the TV and she froze. Wait, Vicky, is that? Victoria turned around to look and saw the camera pan back to reveal a new figure had landed in the bleachers of the stadium. A figure she recognized and felt her heart skip a beat at the sight. Tomiki. Oh no, he's already there.
I glared at him, taking in his features, his cold expression, his dark skin, his yellow eyes. As the wind churned around us and dark clouds gathered overhead, I could feel rain on the horizon, and the air was growing thick with pressure. This felt dangerous. Tomiki, Margon finally spoke. Seems I finally can put a face to the name. Margon, I asked. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? Where do you pick that up? Margon smirked at the question and shook his head. My sister, actually. She had this book when she was a kid of, like, obscure mythological gods and shit. I liked the name, and I used it. An aboriginal thunder god. I think it's suitable. But now I want to ask you a question, Saiyan. Sure, I answered, allowing myself the chance to calm myself and look for openings. I just want to ask, do you have any idea just how much I want to kill you? How much trouble you've caused me since you showed up in Zhang? Margon asked with a furious snarl. I had everything under control, boy. This city was as good as mine. I was going to bring fucking peace to this place. And then you come along and destroy everything I'd worked for. Yeah, seems I have a talent for breaking stuff, don't I? I answered, enjoying the look of anger across his features. Yeah, I can believe that, he snarled. Now, if there are no other pleasantries, I'd like to begin your execution. The pressure around us seemed to grow gradually. Something was happening and I didn't like it. I had to figure out what he was doing. Tell me why you're doing this, I shouted. Why the triads? Why attack the school? You wouldn't understand even if I tried to explain it. Now kindly die for me. Margon finally took a dangerous step forward, and I was out of time. I had to strike first. I launched myself off the bleachers and rushed him. His guard was down, and I could strike him with full force. My fist rushed to his face, and he brought up his hand to block it. I felt the impact. And then, the pain. I screamed in agony as I felt a surge of electricity course up my hand and through my whole body. I ripped my hand away and jumped away from him, breathing heavily and struggling to slow my racing heart. I moaned and clutched my wrists as I heard a low rumble of thunder. But was it from the storm or coming from him? That was quick thinking. If you hadn't pulled away, your heart would have stopped, Margon growled. You fucking stubborn. What the hell was that? I cried. Margon unzipped his jacket and stretched his arms as bolts of lightning jolted from his fingers, racing along the ground and through his body like coiling serpents. Shocking, isn't it? I'm a mutant. My body generates electricity at a frequency of my choosing. Like I said, naming myself after a thunder god felt fitting. Damn, that really hurt, I grumbled, trying to stop my limbs from shaking. Really? Well, don't worry. I'll make the pain stop. Margon raised his hand at me, and I could see bolts of lightning jumping from his fingers. I knew what he was going to do, and I felt the chill in my spine. The air exploded as a bolt of lightning thrust towards me to strike me down. I leapt out of the way and forced my ki into my leg muscles, powering them to their maximum and charging towards him rapidly. I pulled my fist back, ready to smash his skull into the ground. He pulled back his own fist, and our knuckles collided. The air once again exploded like loud thunder as our fists clashed. The ground shook, and the grass rippled away. Margon's face was etched in frustration as he strained against my strength. But I couldn't gloat. My hand had gone numb as it felt like a wall of electricity had been there to meet my fist. I cried out in agony and kicked off of Margon's body, clutching my trembling and numb hand. This man, this creature, he was like nothing I'd fought before. Oh, shit. Where do you get that strength? Margon asked. I wanted to gloat, but my trembling body wouldn't allow me the bravado. I couldn't touch him. He kept pushing out electrical charges that acted as a barrier. If I did land a hit, I'd just get shocked for it. Ah, damn it! Annoying pain in the ass mutant, I snarled. Whine if you like, but you ain't gonna beat me with brute force alone, Margon challenged, raising to his feet as bolts of lightning danced around him. Fine. Then I'll blast you into oblivion, I offered. Margon sprinted towards me, and I sprinted back. I ducked his wild punch and shot one of my own at his stomach, but was thrown backwards by his electrical field. I roared and kicked at his leg, but my own leg was thrown wide by his lightning. Morgan's fist suddenly hit my cheek, and I felt a burning sensation as electrocution charged strike felled me like reeling pain. I leapt clear of him and began firing a volley of ki blasts after him. He raised his hands, and a wall of literal lightning bolts flew up around his hands to block the blast. I sneered and remained in the air where he couldn't follow. "Damn this guy," I muttered. "Doesn't matter how strong I am, he has an answer to everything." "Tired of fighting me down here?" Morgan asked. "I didn't take you for a coward, Tomiki." "Nah, just getting some distance so I can bury you." I cut my hands and began building up ki into them. I blasted him into the earth. Finally, after building it up for a meaningful moment, I fired. The energy blast was immense as it flew towards the target. Morgan sneered and raised his hands as a great lightning bolt rose up to meet me. The two forces collided in the air, and I growled as I felt my attack literally being pushed, as if another force was fighting it back, which it was. I poured more and more ki into the attack, trying to resist it. The two attacks raged for a moment, but finally they both canceled each other out, and I was forced backwards. I remained in the air, but did not flee. I could only glare at Morgan in anger. No opponent I'd ever faced had been able to stop that attack. It pleased me to see that the attack had upset him, though. He was breathing heavy, and there was a hint of fear in his face. I was getting to him. It seemed neither of us were expecting this kind of fight. "I'll just use another," I muttered. "As long as I have the air, he can't fight me back." "Is that what you think?" Morgan laughed. "Allow me to retort." There was another loud sound, like thunder clapping, and Morgan was launching himself into the air. I glanced to see the area where he'd stood before, and it was scarred black and burning with small sparks of fire. He'd used a lightning crash to get into the air. I pulled back, but a little too late. "Spear of the gods," Morgan snarled. He struck me in the chest with his fingers. My world erupted in agony. I screamed in pain as blood flew from my throat and out my mouth. The lightning he wielded found its way through me, and I felt my body rejecting my every command. I plummeted through the air like a thrown rock and hit the ground hard, wheezing and struggling to breathe. Morgan dropped down next to me and smirked with irritated glee. "I gotta admit, Golden Warrior, I can see why Atlas and Hermes failed to beat you. No normal person could withstand my Spear of the Gods." "Clearly you haven't fought that many people," I growled back, trying to maintain some bravado, for all the good it did me. I inhaled deeply and struggled to my feet, but my legs wouldn't obey, shaking like twigs in a gale. "True. I usually don't have to do the fighting. But I'm no stranger to killing," Morgan laughed. "Before I kill you, though, I've just got two things I want to know." He leaned down towards me and spoke softly. "First, I was led to believe you were some sort of Super Saiyan. Why not show it to me?" "Must have slipped my mind," I spat back. The truth was, I did want to go Super Saiyan, but we were too close to the school, and I could see that several onlookers were starting to appear in the stands. There was also that news chopper hovering not too far away. If I let out my Super Saiyan power and got someone hurt because of it, I wouldn't be able to forgive myself. "It doesn't matter, truthfully," he answered. "But second, tell me where your girlfriend Victoria Rhodes is. I want to thank her for all the problems you and her have caused me." "You leave her out of it," I growled. "No help, then?" Morgan asked. "Very well. I'll find her myself eventually. Now let's end this." He raised his hand, charged up under the lightning bolt. "Farewell, Tomiki." "Screw you," I hissed, fighting to get up, but barely able to lift my body. He placed his foot on my chest to hold me down, and I winced. Poor choice of last words. Who am I to judge? He closed his eyes in anticipation. Now, I opened my eyes wide and couldn't quite believe what I saw. Morgan was being tackled from the side by a great beast covered in green scales with a long tail dragging behind him. The beast's fangs were dug deep into Morgan's shoulder and driving him backwards to the other end of the street. There was no mistaking who it was. "Warren!" I shouted. "Get up, Tomiki!" Warren roared. "I can't hold him much longer!" He was right. Even as he was holding back Morgan, I could see lightning bouncing around the lizard man as he winced and fought to keep him hold. "You treacherous bastard!" Morgan snarled. Warren slashed across Morgan's chest and threw him aside with a vicious force. I climbed to my feet, ordering my legs to obey until at last I found myself standing. Warren had gained the edge, but now Morgan was getting back to his feet, and he was pissed. "Warren, stop! Get out of here!" I shouted. "Oh, shut up! I have every right to be here!" Warren argued. "I won't let him kill you or Victoria!" Warren ran at Morgan with the ferocity of a wild animal, and Morgan raised his hands. Get out of my sight, traitor,
Mamargon sneered. No! I screamed. Warren was launched backwards like a rocket, slamming into the yellow field goal post with bolts of electricity bouncing around his flesh. I started to run to him. When Mamargon rounded on me, he disappeared in a flash of lightning, only to reappear and kick my jaw with the kind of force I'd only felt from Master Hayato. I felt my word flash like a bright firecracker, and then I was sailing through the air and landing in a heap on the ground. Mamargon was snarling at both of us, with a look of unquestionable loathing.
Bunch of annoying pests. Ruining everything,
he snarled. I didn't even have the words to respond. I was struggling just to keep breathing.
If you had just stayed out of my way.
He raised his hand to strike me again, to end me this time. And Warren wasn't getting back up after that.
Say goodbye, Saiyan, he hissed.
Marcus! The world froze. Mamargon's eyes widened in terror as he turned fast at the sound. I turned my own head too. They were running down the field. Victoria and a young black girl with the same eyes as Mamargon. Her hair was bouncing as she ran, and she had tears in her eyes, looking mortified. Victoria was right behind her, her own face filled with fear as she caught sight of me and Warren, both on the ground in pain and breathing heavily. Mamargon looked at the girl who'd called his name and shook his head.
Jada, no, go away. Go home, he shouted.
What are you doing? Jada screamed. What is this?
Jada, I said go home.
Answer me, she screamed, her voice choking on sobs. You're Mamargon. All this time, you're the one threatening Zhong? You're the one taking over the city? You're the leader of the Shi Triads? Mamargon was now shaking. He bit his lip, and I could tell he was struggling to maintain composure.
Look, I'll explain everything later, I promise. Just go home before you get hurt.
Who is going to hurt me, Marcus? She cried. No one here is my enemy. Tomaki protects the city, Warren is Victoria's friend, and you are my brother. Who do I have to be afraid of here? Who is going to hurt me? Why do you scare me like this?
You don't understand, sis.
Then make me understand.
I can't,
he roared back, electricity bouncing off his fingertips. Victoria made a move to her, but Jada shoved her off.
I can't do this right now. Listen, I have to do this. I have to protect you from... I have to keep you safe
from what?
Everything!
Mamargon cried. This time it was him who had tears building up in his eyes.
Jada, ever since then, I promised to keep you safe, and I have to keep you safe. I will keep you safe. I promise you that. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do whatever I have to do, even if it hurts. Even if it hurts right now, it'll be okay. In time, it will be fine. Isn't that what I always told you? We will get through in time. You gotta trust me, Jada. We'll keep on going.
These are my friends, Marcus.
You'll make new friends. Better ones. Safer ones. Ones that won't put you in danger,
Mamargon responded. Jada was barely listening anymore. She was just shaking her head. This can't be happening. What have you done to my brother? She whimpered.
I'm still him, he cried, making a move towards her. I haven't changed. Hey, look at me.
Jada turned her eyes away fast, her lip quivering.
Look at me, Jada.
I can't stand you, she whimpered. You put Victoria in danger. You are hurting my friends. How many people have you killed, Marcus? How many? Margon's eyes suddenly narrowed.
Jada, the people I kill are very dangerous people, he hissed.
And how long have you been doing it? How long has my brother been a killer? Jada cried. I was struggling to get up. Feeling was returning to my arms and legs. I was rising slowly. I had to take advantage of this.
Jada, listen to me. Everything I did, everything I became, I did it to protect you. You are safe because of me, and even if you have to hate me forever for it, at least you'll be alive and safe to hate me.
He was distracted. I had my opening. I made a move to get away and get to Warren. I had to get him and Victoria away from this place. I sprinted towards Warren's location when Mamargon finally noticed me.
You!
He shouted and turned his eyes on me and raised his hand. Victoria screamed. Jada cried out, and I saw a flash of lightning erupt in my direction. But just before it hit, a large figure threw me to the ground and took it full in the chest.
Warren!
I screamed. He stood like a paper statue in the wind, rocking on his feet, with a large burning hole in his chest. He stared into the oblivion, his eyes glazed over and blood streaming from his mouth and eyes. Victoria was screaming and running towards him, but he fell forward all the same. I managed to catch him before he hit the ground.
Warren! Warren! Warren, you asshole! Warren, what it... Mickey, he croaked. I'm sorry. Warren, stay alive. Look at me. Look at me, I roared. Keep her safe. Toma. He was gone. I watched as any light faded from his eyes in that instant. Victoria wailed and fell beside him, grabbing Warren and screaming like a child. And I stared stupefied, his blood still on my hands. He was gone. He was really gone. Warren, just like Mom, died saving me from certain death. Shit, Mamaragon snarled. One more time! I looked up to see Mamaragon raising his hand again for another attack. Victoria, get away! I screamed, but the instant she looked up, I saw something else running the way. Jada had lunged, grabbing her brother's arm and knocking it aside, and in the process, she conducted that lightning. Every volt of electricity coursed from his arm straight into her body, sending her reeling back, jolting and jittering in violent spasms before she collapsed on the grass. Mamaragon jumped back in terror and stared at his sister, spasming and finally going still. Jada! Jada! He bellowed. His roar seemed to call the storm as the rain I'd expected began to fall, and the lightning overhead crashed and flashed across the sky. People were screaming and fleeing as there were now 2 bodies on the ground. Victoria was sobbing uncontrollably beside Warren. Mamaragon was crying and screaming over Jada. Me? I felt something. I felt something stirring. A violent rage I'd not felt in a long time. Just like then, it was flaring up, flashing like a raging hurricane beneath the surface. Mom, Warren, Jada. Why do people keep dying to save me? Why do they all have to die so I can live? Mamaragon finally turned to me, his eyes wild with murder and rage, his former sophistication gone. Lightning bolted from his eyes and body as he rose in the air. You did this! You bastard! You took my sister! Victoria, get out of here! I roared as I felt the rage rushing into me. Golden flashes kept meeting my gaze. I had to use it. I needed to use it. I would use it. I'm done holding back. I'm finishing this!
And that was chapter 21. Let me know what you guys think. All right, let's keep going. Moving on to chapter 22. Chapter 22, here we go. Cassidy Hill had been working with Sean City News for 5 years as an on-the-field reporter and journalist. She'd taken some dangerous jobs in the past and had gone to places where she knew that her well-being was most certainly in danger. She developed calm nerves as a result, even amongst gunfire and shouting and protesting. But as she sat in the hovering chopper over Zhonghai's football stadium, lightning flashed in the sky and rain pelted down. She felt a sickening feeling of dread wash over her. Conscious that she was live for everyone to see, she masked the sensation quickly and went back to report on what was going on below her. Thank you, Tom, she said, addressing the host back on the safety of the news station. This is Cassidy Hill, and we are currently overlooking an absolute throwdown in the football stadium Zhonghai School. Infamous G Triad leader Mamaragon has finally revealed himself and is currently facing off against the recently arrived Tomiki, the defender of Zhong Borough. Since arriving in Zhong some weeks ago, Tomiki has bested some of the Triad's most dangerous executives, and it looks like Mamaragon is finally going to settle the score. We saw a brief break in the action when 2 women appeared on scene, along with the elusive Komodo herself, who Mamaragon just dispatched with a bolt of lightning. Ladies and gentlemen, this is getting too dangerous to even
Wait, something is happening. Something is happening. Cassidy stopped speaking as Jake, her cameraman, zoomed in below. They watched as Mamaragon was screaming over a young black girl who just collapsed next to him. Tomoki, meanwhile, was snarling furiously, eyes flashing with rage. The ground was shaking, and the air felt like it was rising in pressure rapidly. "Dear God," Cassidy whispered, "give us some distance." The chopper pilot obediently began pulling back so as not to be too close to whatever was about to happen. And Cassidy, for a moment, forgot she was supposed to be reporting what was happening, content to simply watch and see two titans clash. "I'll kill you!" Mamaragon roared. He vanished in a flash of light, but to my surprise, I could feel where he was going. He reappeared next to me, fists raised, and my legs swung out to meet him. We collided and we sprung off each other, a thunderclap announcing our strikes. "Get out of here!" I shouted to Victoria. Victoria was busy trying to drag Warren's body away from the fighting. I just had enough time to see Mamaragon rebound back to strike. I dodged and struck him across the face. He repaid me with a hand clawing at me to rake electricity across me. The golden light began to fill my eyes, the energy exploding and demanding release. I was furious, more angry than I'd felt in years. Warren, that girl Jada, why do people die so I can live? Why can't I protect anyone? It was coming. That power was filling me. My eyes found Mamaragon and I sneered. I was done waiting. "You want the Golden Warrior, you son of a bitch? Take a good, long look!" It erupted like a volcano, the golden light flowing off of me as a geyser, and the air repulsed with anger. My hair turned gold, and I felt my exhausted body overflowing with strength. Mamaragon, though outraged himself, had the sense to look stunned. But his shock didn't last long. He was rallying and running at me. "Golden or rotten, now turn your bones to ashes!" Mamaragon roared. I sneered and raised my hand up. "Die!" Mamaragon fired a series of lightning bolts, and I raised my own hands. I fired. My blast met his, and the two roared like a pair of angry beasts. The two energy shots finally fell apart, and I moved in through the light. It was like the rest of the world was in slow motion as I closed the distance. Was he even moving? I couldn't tell, but I didn't care. I struck once, twice, a third time, 4 times, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I punched again and again until I was literally lifting Mamaragon's body off the ground with the rapid volley of punches I was unleashing. I felt his ribs cracking in his chest and blood being dripped from his teeth as I could see his eyes widening in horror. Give the ad a second. I could feel his electrical barrier with each punch, but it felt like nothing more than a minor tingling in my hands and wrists. I hardly noticed it. My aura defended me from his lightning. I stopped the combination for his body to start to fall, and as it fell, I swung a roundhouse kick into his cheek, which sent him rocketing backwards like he'd been shot out of a cannon. But I wasn't done. I was nowhere close to done. I shot after him and reappeared above his body. I dropped down, slamming my knee directly into his chest, sending him crashing into the grass and leaving a crater. Mamaragon howled in pain. "How does it feel, you arrogant bastard?" I bellowed. "Not used to this kind of pain, are you?" I struck him hard in the cheek, ripping apart the football field as his body dug a trench through the ground from the force. I pursued and grabbed his wrist, flinging him out of the ground so he was once again where I could hit him. Mamaragon's face was bleeding, his body was broken, and yet he was still overflowing with contempt and rage. Lightning tore from him, and I had to evade fast to avoid the brunt of it. My aura protected me, but too much energy, and I would start to feel it. "You took her from me," he growled. "You took her!" I didn't bother responding. He was too far gone into his own rage, and frankly, I just wanted to fight him. I had to fight. I couldn't protect anyone, so I just destroyed the threat before it could take anyone else. I lunged at him, and he took to the air using his electrical discharge to gain altitude. I pursued, and our fight went into the skies. This is Cassidy Hill reporting again live from the battle in Zhong High School between Tomoki and Mamaragon. Ladies and gentlemen, this battle has gotten to the point of, oh my god! Cassidy was forced to duck as the two combatants flew right past her chopper, crashing into each other with outstanding force and rage. Lightning flashed around them with each strike and blow. The Golden Warrior Tomoki was unquestionably holding his own against the seemingly invincible Mamaragon. Each blow sent shockwaves through the air, and Cassidy felt lurches in her stomach with each one. Jake struggled to keep his camera on the action, but the two fighters were moving fast and flashing in and out of view as they struggled to kill the other. Suddenly, one of them reappeared only feet away from the chopper. It was Tomoki. He glared at them and hissed. "Get away from here!" he roared before turning his attention back to Mamaragon.
Miss Cassidy, we should do what he says, Jake whimpered.
Cassidy nodded. Yes. Tom, we're cutting back to you while we get a safe distance away from this. We'll keep you updated as the situation becomes one. Jesus!
A lightning bolt shot past the chopper's tail, and Cassidy had to grab Jake for support. Tomoki was already on top of Amargon before he could take another shot. For the first time since she was a child, Cassidy was praying to God. Praying with all her might. How many more are you gonna kill? I roared as I grabbed Amargon by the throat and threw him away from the chopper. Everyone, if that's what it takes, he bellowed. I'll end everything! Then I'm ending you, I vowed, kicking him as high into the air as I could. I'd unleash my full power safely above the clouds, but Amargon was already preparing as he held out his hands. That's my line, you murderer, he shouted. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning from the atmosphere itself struck Amargon, and to my shock, he was channeling it. He was combining the natural lightning with his own to make a massive blast to destroy me, and likely the whole football field below us as while he was at it. There were too many onlookers and cameras recording our clash. I couldn't allow that to hit. I watched as he gathered more and more electricity to himself, and I snarled. If I dodged that attack, hundreds would die. But if I did nothing, I'd die anyway. I inhaled slowly and drew my hands back, gathering energy of my own to me. I closed my eyes and spoke. Mom, I whispered, you gave me this power. You were the one who believed I was more than a murderer. Please, give me the power to stop this guy. The energy began to fill my hands, pouring into the blast I would unleash. It had to be strong enough. This had to be enough. My power was dwelling further as my mind went to Warren, to that girl Jada, to Victoria, to Mom. The golden power was getting larger. Amargon let out a roar that I couldn't hear over the sound of the thunder. The lightning bolt exploded down, and I responded by unleashing my own blast. The two forces collided in midair, and I roared to the heavens as the power of lightning collided with the rage of a Saiyan. That's what I was. A Saiyan. A Super Saiyan. I wouldn't falter. I wouldn't fail. I would fight. I would win. I poured on the power. I roared. I gnashed my teeth, and I let my anger and fury fuel the blast. After a few moments, I noticed to my relief the lightning was fading. The bolts giving way to my rage. My Kamehameha wave, normally blue and brilliant, now glowed a glorious white, with small bolts of lightning escaping from the ray. The Amargon vanished in the roar and brilliance of the blast, and I watched as it cut a literal hole in the clouds and burnt the palms of my hands as it seared my skin. I lowered my hands in amazement of the blast I'd caused and looked up as the light finally dissipated. The air itself felt oddly dense, humid almost. When the light vanished, I saw a scorched body fall from the sky and crash in the middle of the football field. I drifted slowly down to the defeated Amargon, laying in a heap on the ground, eyes shut tight from the pain, his clothes scorched and torn, and his body burnt all over. He was helpless. His body was useless now. He was at my mercy. I could kill you, I growled. I probably should kill you. But as I started to put my actions to the words, I remembered Victoria and Mom. And I stopped. I let the golden energy fade. I let my anger be replaced with the agony of sadness. The weight of the fight caught up with me, and I sank to my knees, breathing heavily as rain fell all around us. Amargon's yellow eyes opened to gaze at me, his teeth clenched. If I killed you, Amargon, that would make me no different than you. Jada, he whispered, please. Is she...
I glanced back to where we'd left the crowd behind. I silently tried to feel for an energy from her, and to my relief, I felt something. I feel her energy. She's alive, I assured him. Amargon looked at me in disbelief as if I was lying, but I gave him a solid look and nodded. She's alive, I repeated. Amargon winced and bit his lip. He looked away from me and I watched him. I could tell he had something he wanted to say.
You're lucky, he ground.
Damn it, you're lucky. She your sister?
I doubt she wants anything to do with me anymore.
Amargon groaned, his eyes getting heavy.
I did everything to keep her safe.
How? I asked. He didn't answer me. He was fading into unconsciousness, and the crowds of people were starting to get brave enough to come close. As he passed out, I felt an overwhelming urge to join him. was tired. My body was practically destroyed. I heard someone shouting my name, and then I felt myself collapsing into the sweet embrace of sleep.
All right, and that was chapter 22. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think, and then we'll move on to the next one. I'll go ahead and take the picture down. I think next is Monster Club. Well, sad we don't have our normal numbers tonight, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and put up our Monster Club. Let's see. Let's put the same one from last time. That'll be a good idea. Just gotta find it. There we go. This one was drawn by Hannah. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and start reading the next chapter of Monster Club. We're on Monster Club chapter 33, and this is Calypso's Memory. Yeah, we're about to do Calypso's Memory, guys. Y'all excited? I'm excited. Let me slide my microphone a little bit closer. Okay. All right, here we go. Monster Club, Chapter 33, Calypso's Memory, written September 30th, 2015. What do you suppose it is, Father?
Son, it's obvious what this is. It's the creature from the sailor's tales. A mermaid.
I stirred from my slumber. I did not remember falling asleep, but I had somehow passed out. When? How? What had happened? I racked my brain to try to remember. I remember swimming towards the lagoon, and then there was a shadow in the water, a loud humming sound, and then sharp pain, a cutting, ripping pain on my head and back. I tried to open my eyes and look around me.
Father, she's waking up. Don't touch her, son. Let her come to her senses.
I heard these voices again. I looked up to see two figures above me. One was small and the other large. They both stank of dead fish. As my vision cleared, though, one looked very old with a thick beard and a wet suit on. The other was younger, maybe around 20 or 22. Yet the age difference... Excuse me. Sorry. Yet the age difference was clear. I felt the ground beneath me. I was on a wooden ship. I'd been pulled from the water. I tried to crawl away, but felt a horrid headache strike me.
Don't try to move,
the boy said. You got hit by the bow of our ship and then caught in our fishing net. Fishing net? These two are fishers?
Son, go get some fresh bandages. Her head wound is opening again,
the older man said. The boy hesitantly did as told, and I was left alone with the older man.
Don't worry. I won't hurt you. I just want to help. My name is Brandon Spearman. My son, who's just run off, is named Heath. Do you have a name?
I did not answer at first, but this man was smiling in concern, not in a dangerous desire. I felt comforted. This man had left me on his boat, and he had tended my wounds, despite me being a creature of the sea. Calypso. My name is Calypso, I answered.
A lovely name. Is your school perhaps nearby?
The two of us stared for a while, and I felt my heart picking up. How did he know that mermaids traveled in schools? And he was right. I'd been separated a few days ago due to a storm and was far behind them. Naomi, the school leader, had been very strict about keeping everyone together, but I was sure we were all separate for a while, far and wide. I got separated, I admitted, not sure I wanted to say everything.
Well, I can't let you go back to the ocean until that wound heals up right. Could attract sharks.
As he spoke, his son, Heath, returned with fresh bandages. He handed them to Brandon, and the old man removed a set of old and bloody bandages from his head and began to wrap them around my head again, tenderly and carefully.
That should hold for a while. I want to get that looked at, though.
Father, I can speak with you in private for a moment? Heath asked. Brandon nodded.
Wait here, Calypso. I'll be right back.
As I watched them walk away, and as soon as the two were below deck, my first instinct was to leap into the ocean. I had to find my school. I had to escape the humans. Naomi had always said to avoid and fear humans. Humans will betray you. From the time of their inception, humans have always feared and hated that which they find unnatural or different from them. If it has intelligence and are not human, they will seek to destroy you. They are our enemy, Calypso. And until now, I believed that. Even deep in my soul, I knew that these words rang with truth, but Brandon had taken me aboard his vessel. He'd healed my wounds, and he'd understood a little bit about our kind. Could he be so bad?
Absolutely not!
I squeaked at the shout and practically leapt into the air despite my legs still in the form of a tail. The voice was Brandon's, and he sounded angry.
But father, this is a mermaid, a rare creature. It is for that reason alone that what you suggest is out of the question, Brandon snapped back. We're taking her back home to treat her injuries. That's the end of the discussion, son. Son, I'm not arguing this point. Turn the ship to the east and take us home.
Heath marched off and Brandon returned. He knelt down again and smiled.
I'm sorry about that, Calypso. He investigated the rest of me. I don't see any other serious injuries. You were quite lucky, I dare say.
How long have I been on your ship? I asked.
Well, when you hit your head on the bow, you fell unconscious and got caught up in the fishing net. We pulled you aboard and kept an eye on you. It's been about 2 or 3 hours, I think.
I gasped and scrambled towards the edge of the ship. Oh no! My school's probably already so far ahead of me. Naomi will be so scared I have to get back.
You can't go, Brandon cried, grabbing my shoulders. If you go in that water, your wounds will reopen and attract sharks. Let me treat you first, then I'll let you go.
You don't understand. If I'm missing, Naomi will be really, really upset, I cried. She worries about all of us.
Naomi must be the head of your school, Brandon asked. Well, if she is, then she'd care more about your health than your attendance.
His words were filled with wisdom and patience. After a moment, I sat back down on the deck and allowed him to steer us towards his home. When we finally arrived there, he helped me out of the boat. My fins turned to legs because of how dry I was, and I waddled and stumbled across the dock, not used to them. I entered his home, and Heath left to go into the kitchen while Brandon stayed to look at my forehead cut. He pulled out a needle and thread and began to sew up the gash. I winced as he worked on me, but I did appreciate the concern. After a while, he stepped back.
Let's leave those stitches in there a few days, make sure that heals just right.
Thank you, I said back, but I need to leave now.
I'm afraid that's still not a good idea, dear, Brandon said sympathetically. You don't want to get those stitches wet. They'll unravel. Until they're removed, you can't get your head underwater.
But my friends, my school...
We'll have to wait a little longer. I'm sorry, but head wounds bleed badly, and I'm still a little worried you could have a concussion. Just give it 3 days, then I'll remove the stitches and you'll be free to go.
I sat in defeat and nodded. 3 days. But I don't wish to be a burden. You've done so much for me already.
It's nothing, really. I used to be a paramedic, you know, in the Marines, Brandon chuckled. But that was years ago. Now I'm just an old retired fisherman.
Why give up life as a medicine man? I asked. Did you not like it?
No, dear, it's not about that. I retired because I developed PTSD, and they wouldn't let an old fart like me in a doctor's office anyway, unless it was to get a checkup. I became a paramedic so I could learn to save lives rather than just take them. That's what I did with you today.
I felt my heart skip a beat at that prospect. Saving lives and making a difference. Could I do that too? Could I do what Brandon does? Actually do something meaningful? Will you show me a little of what you do now? I asked.
I can't teach you everything in 3 days, but I can show you a little something if you're truly interested.
I blushed a little, afraid of the very idea of asking to learn. Perhaps I was even afraid of learning something new from a human, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. I'd love to learn. 3 days passed sooner than I thought. And in that time I spent with Brandon, I learned so much about medicine and first aid. Brandon was a wonderful teacher. He allowed me to use his bed to rest on, and he treated me like I was his own. Heath, though, was more wary. He kept him to himself most of the time. However, I often felt his eyes on me, as if he was waiting or watching for something. His eyes unnerved me, and there were some nights I could hear Brandon and Heath arguing, and I was sure it was about me. Brandon never brought it up, though. He always seemed happy. On the third day, Brandon sat me down on the bed and began removing the stitches from my head.
Looks like your wound's more or less healed, and barely any scar. That's excellent.
Thank you, Brandon, I laughed. And thank you for teaching me about medicine. I can't wait to share what I know with my school when I find them.
Brandon nodded. Suddenly he perked up and looked out the window behind me. As he did, his eyes narrowed. I turned as well, but couldn't see from where I was sitting. Brandon stood up and walked to the window and glanced outside.
Oh no. Heath, you foolish boy.
Brandon?
Brandon turned and grabbed my hand forcefully, yanking me up.
Ow!
Sorry, there's no time to explain. My son has done something stupid.
What? What's he done?
I asked, but even as I asked, I could hear odd sounds. Car doors opening and slamming shut and men talking. There was the sound of a truck roaring to life.
My son's grades couldn't get him scholarships, and over the last few days he figured turning you over to a zoo or to a scientist might make him some money to get him to college. I tried to stop him, but
He what?
I cried, you must get to the ocean. Once we're in the open sea, you can find your school. Just run!
He shouted, pushing me towards the door and towards the dock. I stumbled and turned to look back.
But Brandon,
There was a knock at the door, and I could see a few men standing by the truck. There was a large white truck with a giant tank of water in the back.
There's no time, Calypso. Just go, he shouted.
But why? I cried back.
Because I want to save lives, he said. Not destroy them. Now get out of here.
Thank you,
I cried, running and literally stumbling into the ocean. The moment my body hit the water, my legs turned to fins, and I shot like a torpedo for the open sea, crying salty tears into a salty surf, feeling my heart rip in two directions. One half took me to the endless sea, while the other stayed behind in that blessed little fishing house with Brandon, the man who had just saved my life for the second time. And that was chapter 33. Gives you a little understanding of where Calypso gets her medical knowledge. She learned what little she did. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get on to the next part. Monster Club, Chapter 34, written October 27th, 2015.
Naomi, Calypso cried. I don't believe it.
The two ran to each other and threw their arms around each other in an embrace, Naomi practically in tears.
It's a miracle. I thought you died in the hurricane, Naomi laughed. Naomi, what the hell? Tori laughed in excitement. You mean you know her? Calypso, what's going on? Sarah asked curiously.
The two broke apart and smiled back at everyone.
Everyone, this is Naomi. She's a special breed of merfolk called a Saujin, or mershark. She was the leader of my school back when I met the club,
Calypso explained. Abraham, along with most of the rest of the club, was at a loss for words. The last thing any of them had expected had been this. Naomi was Calypso's friend from the past. Naomi put her hand on Calypso's shoulders and turned her to face her.
Calypso, what happened? When we were all separated, I searched the seas for weeks for you, but never found you, Naomi questioned. I found the others, but most had perished in the storm. I was picked up by a fishing boat, manned by a very kind doctor named Brandon. He treated me and taught me medicine. I was then found by Michelle after washing up on a beach.
Calypso turned and smiled in Michelle's direction, who had her arms crossed, but nodded all the same. Naomi finally took notice of the rest of the club and glanced around them. Her eyes looked upon them all curiously, but also cautiously.
Mato mentioned this club.
Her eyes then fell on Abraham, and they narrowed.
And he also mentioned the human.
He's with us, Michelle spoke up defensively. I promise I'm not here to, Abraham began to explain, but Naomi turned away from him and looked at Tori.
You're on lookout tonight, Tori. Since we have guests beyond extra high alert, they might have been followed. Yes, ma'am,
Tori saluted and ran out the door, leaping out into the air and flying away. Naomi then turned to Mato.
Set up the beds for our guests. They're staying.
Even the Hugh,
I didn't stutter, Mato. Just do it.
Naomi snapped back. Abraham could tell just from listening to her commands that this was a woman of authority. He could easily believe she was a leader of Calypso's school. Her voice was like a firm pronouncing of a hammer, strict and forceful. Mato nodded and turned to do as instructed.
Naomi finally turned back to the club. I want to welcome you to our home, and I'd like to apologize for Mato's actions outside at the shopping center. You may remain with us for a while so you can get yourselves back on your feet. There is stew here for you to eat if you're hungry, and when you're ready to sleep, you can collapse wherever there's a bed. We appreciate the hospitality, Asher answered. Naomi nodded to him and then to Calypso. A friend of Calypso is a friend of mine, she said kindly. Her eyes then turned to Abraham, and for a split second that kindness melted to reveal a cautious and almost threatening glare. The sensation vanished quickly when her eyes returned to the rest of the club. Anyway, come and dig in then. The club sat down around the stew, and while it was nothing incredibly mouth-watering, it was good enough to eat, and the club was very grateful for it. Asher touched little, though, as his eyes kept shifting back to Mato. While he hadn't made a move to attack Abraham, there was no question to Asher that there was animosity. When the stew was all finished, Naomi took Calypso's hand and led her away to a part of the warehouse to talk to her. We should bed down, Michelle whispered to Abraham. Okay, but what about Calypso? I'm sure she has catching up to do, Michelle assured him. She then looked at Asher. I know Tori's on guard tonight, but I want you on alert too. She may be Calypso's friend, but I'm sure you and I both noticed the look she was giving Abraham. Yeah, I noticed, Asher growled. I'll keep watch. Asher stood up, and it was as if he had melted into the shadows themselves. He quickly vanished from view, leaving the club to their business. You'll sleep with me, Michelle whispered, tapping Abraham's shoulder. Wait, a what? Abraham gasped, blushing heavily. Michelle reached over and tapped her knuckles against his head as if to bonk his head softly. Not like that, you dummy, she snapped. It's for your protection. I'm a light sleeper and will wake up if there's a problem. That and Michelle like cuddling, Tamil spoke up. Michelle squeaked and spun around and blush evident on her stern face. Were you eavesdropping? My sight is poor, my hearing very good, Tamil pointed out. Michelle growled under her breath, but never being able to keep secrets around Tamil. Michelle, it's okay. I really don't think there'll be a problem. I mean, what with Asher keeping watch, Satan himself wouldn't try to take me. You really overestimate Asher, Abraham, Michelle pointed out. He's strong, but he also holds back for safety's sake. Besides, it never hurts to be too cautious. Well, why not Katie then, I asked, or Tamil? They'd wake up if there was a problem. Tamil would, but he's not a fighter. It'd be like if a teddy bear were protecting you. I'm not a teddy bear! Shut it, Tamil, Michelle snapped. And as for Katie, well, she coils in her sleep to keep warm, and she might suffocate you. I'd rather not see you dead in the morning with all your bones broken. Oh, yeah, that would be for the best, Abraham agreed. Don't worry, I don't bite. Well, unless it's a full moon, Michelle whispered sheepishly. Sorry, I guess that is a bad word of confidence. No, it's okay. Michelle grabbed herself a makeshift masters and crawled into it. Abraham looked around to the others. Sarah had sewed together blankets out of her silk. Tamil was relaxing next to Sarah and Katie on either side of him, and of course the other mattress was for Calypso when she returned. Annie was already crawling into that bed as well. Since Asher didn't need to sleep that night, he would be fine without a mattress. You coming? Michelle asked. Abraham gulped and climbed in too. He was surprised by how warm the blanket was, despite it being made of spider silk. Michelle's body was warm as well, which made Abraham feel all that much sleepier. You can relax, you know, or are you that uncomfortable sleeping next to a werewolf? No, that's not the problem, Abraham. It's that, well, you're a girl, and I've never slept in a bed with a girl before. Michelle stifled a laugh and glanced at Abraham with an understanding yet teasing gaze. You really are a different breed, aren't you? She laughed. You know, most guys would love to be in bed with a girl. Well, yeah, and I'm certainly one of them, but it's just, I'm kind of nervous about, you know. Abraham, you are a genuinely good person, Michelle said, so don't worry about it. She gave out a long yawn and cuddled up next to Abraham. Now hold still. I do need to cuddle to get warm. Despite that, Abraham suspected she was only doing this to tease him. Hey, Michelle, can I ask you a question? Yeah? A personal question? Yes, what is it? Michelle pressed. Abraham sighed and almost stopped himself. It was a hard question to ask, and it harder for Michelle to answer. But she was the only member of the club he had yet to fully understand. Michelle, why did you start this club? And how did you do it? Michelle shrugged. It's not much of a personal question. I started alongside Solomon when I came to his house accidentally. That's not what I meant, Abraham groaned. You're really protective of me now, but back then, when we first met, you didn't trust me and wanted to throw me out. A lot like Naomi and Mato do. You hated me before, didn't you? Abraham, hate is a strong word, didn't you? Abraham snapped, wanting some answers. He had to know what had changed between him and Michelle. He had to know the reason for this hatred that Mato and Naomi held for him and the secret to getting past it. Abraham, I never hated you. I never did, Michelle muttered, her grip on him tightening slightly. If I'm being honest, I was scared of you. Scared? Humans are what tore everyone in this family apart. Our seclusion and our differences make us monsters to them. I thought you would come to divide us again, and I didn't want that. That's why I tried to throw you out. But after I saw how willing you were to become part of our family, I let down my guard. So if you don't hate me, what do you think of me? Abraham asked. Michelle blushed and sighed. Now that is a bit too personal, she whispered. Wait, do you mean I'm really tired, Abraham? Michelle cut him off and closed her eyes. Right. Sorry, Abraham really replied sheepishly. There was a long moment of pause before he heard a faint breath from Michelle. You remind me a lot of my dad, Michelle whispered. Abraham smiled at that and leaned back, satisfied with the answer, even if it didn't solve his problem. He wanted to know how to reach Mato, Naomi, and Tori, to show them that he wasn't a killer. It seemed that Michelle's feelings towards him were not on the same level as theirs. Could it even be possible to reach them? Psst! Abraham opened one eye and looked at Michelle. Did you say something? Go back to sleep, Michelle groaned sleepily. Psst! Abraham sat up again and looked around, curious as to what was trying to reach attention. Psst! I'm outside! The voice called. Abraham silently slid out of the bed with Michelle and hurried to the door, sliding it open slightly as the dark night was beginning to give way to the daylight. There was a faintest sign of the light of the sun peeking over the edge. However, there was no sign of anyone who might have beckoned to him or called. Had he imagined it the whole time? Up here! Abraham looked up to see Tori flapping her wings and flying overhead happily. She landed next to the very surprised Abraham and winked. Hi! Hi? Abraham replied confused. What is it? I wanted to show you something awesome, she said excitedly. I think you'll really like it. Tori, I'm really tired. I'd rather just sleep. Oh, come on, Tori pleaded. Mato and Naomi never want to come see it anymore, but it's the most awesomest thing in the world. Awesomest isn't a word. What are you, a dictionary? She scowled. Will you just come with me or not? Abraham groaned and shook his head. Fine. Where are we going? Tori ran forward and leapt up, landing on his shoulders, each of her talons digging into Abraham's arms tightly. Ow! We're going up! She beat her wings hard and lifted him off the ground as if he were no more than a twig. She flew up and over the warehouse, but then just easily dropped him on the roof so that the horizon was easily visible. Abraham looked up as she descended and landed next to him, folding her wings beside him. What are we doing here? Abraham asked, his sleepiness all but gone. This is the spot. Now wait here. I want to ask your friends to come. Found you! Abraham spun around to see Michelle climbing onto the roof. Clinging to her back was little Annie, who was yawning sleepily. See, I told you I heard noises, Annie yawned. Michelle's hair was a mess, but her eyes vicious. What are you doing kidnapping Abraham, bird brain? Michelle shouted. Who are you calling bird brain? Tori shouted defensively. I was going to come get you too. What for? Michelle demanded. No time. Go get the rest of your rings quick. Tori pleaded. It's going to happen any moment and I want them all to see it. Michelle did not comply, but just simply sat Annie down, who ran over to Abraham and hugged his neck. You're not hurt, are you? Annie asked. I'm fine, kid, Abraham laughed. I'm still curious. Tori, what is going to happen? Too late, it started! Tori squealed, running to the edge of the roof and looking out to the east. At that moment, the sun broke the horizon. Beams of light shone for miles, cutting through the dark blue skies and illuminating the world. Trees basked in its splendor and left nothing but shadows behind them. The golden light swallowed up the landscape, and Abraham was forced to shield his eyes slightly to protect his vision. It was like heaven itself was opening its gates, allowing glory to shine through the earth. Michelle grunted in shock as the light blinded her. Tori shielded her face with her wings, but her smile only grew wider. It's so beautiful, she cried. And indeed it was. The world seemed to practically glow. Abraham glanced back at Michelle and found that she too was smiling, her tears rolling down her face gently at the sight. Annie gasped in awe and dropped into Abraham's lap to watch it with him. It's gorgeous, Michelle whispered. I've forgotten how wonderful a sunrise could be. People just don't appreciate it anymore, Tori giggled. I wish I could get more people up here to watch it with me. I want to share the sunset with everyone. Well, we all see it, Tori, Abraham pointed out, rubbing Annie's head. Yes, but not everyone appreciates it, Michelle pointed out. We may all see the same sunrise, but it's how we look at it and how we appreciate it that makes it more glorious. Abraham, it's like you in this club, Annie pointed out. Is it? Abraham asked. Michelle nodded. I think she's right, she agreed. Abraham was a little confused by that statement, but let it slide as his gaze was drawn back to the rising sun. He could practically hear the choir in the distance as the sight called for the most beautiful notes. Tori, are you afraid of humans? I asked her. Tori shook her head. Naomi and Mato don't like them, but I don't really dislike them, she admitted. Besides, you seem okay. That's why I wanted you to see the sunrise, too. Really? Michelle asked. Well, when I found you guys, you all seemed really sad and down about stuff. Well, when I feel upset, I watch the sunrise, Tori beamed. Then I feel all better. Do you guys feel better? Tori asked hopefully. Michelle and Abraham exchanged a glance and smiled. Yeah, we really do, Abraham answered. Great, Tori squealed. Whenever you're sad again, just watch a sunrise.
All right, and that was chapter 34. That brings us to chapter 35 next time. Let's take down this picture. Let me know what you think while I put up the Shogun of Crime picture. Because we are running out of time. We are. All right, let's see. Shogun of Crime. I think we're on chapter 10. I could be wrong. Wow, only 12 viewers. Maybe the lowest number I've ever gotten on a stream. 11. Oh, man. Well, I mean, that's what it is. All right, well, I guess that's what it is. Let's get going. All right, Shogun of Crime, chapter 10, written January 12th, 2019. We're unloading the last shipment now. I don't think we'll get a better deal than this one, though. I just got off the phone with our contact in the force, and he says the sounds and buzzing of voices echoed in Oichi's ear, with updates on the state of her growing syndicate. With the fall of her late husband, she pushed their drug-running actions into overtime. With the takeover of the Black Death, she now had access to gun running as well. This had been both a blessing and a curse for her. Many of the lowering-ranked subordinates had started selling their new arms to anyone with money to buy them, something Oichi had to stamp out quickly. She made it a new rule that not just any bum could purchase an illegal firearm from the gang. The likelihood of some undercover cop or rival gang using this as a way in would be too high. The cost of heightened presence meant more enemies were aware of you. Only vetted and accounted for buyers could purchase guns off her syndicate. Most of the gang didn't appreciate these conditions, but none dared question her. Better yet, there was little to no police interference in their primary affairs. Why? Simple. Public. With a police force almost as corrupt as the gangs in the city, the police were not seen as protectors by the public, so their actions are often watched with just as much scrutiny as the criminals they arrest. When Oichi helped take down the Black Death and finance the construction of a recreation center for kids after school, her gang was becoming far more beloved. The police could risk no reckless action, lest they turn the entire public eye against them, and civil unrest would become a problem they could not fix. Oichi was pleased, very pleased, but there still remained two problems she struggled with. One was what Todd had told her during their date. The strongest criminal enterprise in the city, the Leviathan Syndicate and the Timberwolf Triad, there would come a point that she'd have to contend with them, and she knew they weren't quite ready for that yet. Knowing of them made them feel like a great overbearing shadow, judging her every thought and movement. The other were the Warrior Kings. The small-time street gang had not folded thanks to the recreation center. They were a bit more disciplined than Oichi had given them credit for. They'd hidden themselves well, but she knew that, in a week's time, maybe less, they'd get desperate. They'd make a mistake. Hey, boss. Oichi snapped out of her personal thoughts and looked over to her subordinates who had been talking. I'm sorry, I was thinking. Go ahead and finish unloading our new stock and start levying the weight amount. Get it to our street vendors. As for the deal on the new handguns, the price is still too high. Tell them to lower the price or find another bunch of thugs who are willing to buy subpar materials for, what's the phrase, a king's ransom? And what do our contacts say? He says we've got the green light to start expanding downtown tonight. Then let's jump on it. Yes, ma'am. Miss Tyga! The room went still as Marcus burst into the room, his eyes wide and face slightly pale. Oichi looked taken aback and hurried to him. Marcus, what is it? The news! Turn on the TV! Someone get that thing on, Oichi shouted. A young man grabbed the remote and switched on the large TV in her home. He switched it to the news, and Oichi approached. All eyes were now on a news report, and Lexington High was on the news. The gunner himself had yet to be apprehended, but had been confirmed that this shooting was thanks to the actions of a small-time gang in the area, the Warrior Kings. So far, there are 2 confirmed dead children and at least 5 injured, including a school counselor who had tried to talk down the gunner. Police did not arrive on scene until 10 minutes after the incident began, and by that time, the report continued.
Goddamn school shooting, Marcus hissed.
You were right, boss. The Kings got desperate and shot up the school to make a point. They're going to scare away any students from going to that recreation center.
Do we know who did it? Oichi asked.
No.
Pity, Oichi sneered. I'd have loved to cut off his head.
The entire county is in an uproar, and the Kings are basking in their new notoriety, Marcus argued. We can't sit on our hands anymore, ma'am. This won't be fixed by financing a few events and clubs.
I agree. So what do you suggest? Oichi asked.
Ma'am? Marcus asked.
As unfortunate as the situation is, we expected a move like this, yes? The Kings made a foolish and reckless act. The public is wounded, and now they need someone to step in and get justice. Have we not set ourselves in the perfect position to do so?
Well, yes, ma'am. Did you plan for this?
Not a shooting, no. And I'm very upset that it came to that. But we can't shrink back yet. We'll give our condolences to the families after the Kings pay.
Yes, ma'am, Marcus agreed. And if I may be bold for a moment, ma'am, I think I have an idea.
I'm listening.
Marcus ran to the center of the room and pulled out his phone, opening it up to a map app. He turned the map on so it showed an overhead shot of Lexington High and the recreation center. He scrolled a little to the right and pointed at a parking garage. This is garage where the most of the Kings are holed up.
How do you know that?
When we built the rec facility, we were able to keep tabs on King movements. They've been seen going in and out of this place repeatedly. Some of the known gang members from the school tend to go there after the bell rings. I'm pretty certain they're there.
Good. So what do you want to do about it?
Because it has openings all around, the Kings can always know the police are coming and then bolt before they get caught. But when I was looking over the contracting designs, I found out there's a sewer drainage opening under the garage that connects to one out near the rec center.
Secret entrances. Feels like a spy movie.
I say we get together in a small group of our best enforcers. I'll take them to the sewer myself, and they come out of the drainage and into the garage secretly.
You'll be outnumbered, and we have no way of knowing how well fortified they are.
I think if you can cause a distraction in plain view, it'll keep their attention long enough for us to get in and take them by surprise, Marcus added. Besides, if the public knows that you were the ones to bring down the Warrior Kings, it'll only make things that much better for us.
Oichi felt a grin slip across her face as she thought over the plan. Marcus was more than just a simple secretary or spokesman. He had a military mind behind that calm smile. Her respect for him grew somewhat in that instant. Gather the boys you need and feel free to dip into our stockpile. Take what you have to.
What about you, ma'am?
I'll arrange something out in front of the garage, which replied. Now go. We take down the Kings tonight. I want this done efficiently.
Yes, ma'am. That night, a young man named Eric was sitting on a fold-out chair on the 3rd floor of the parking garage. He hated watch duty. It was boring and stupid. Right now, though, he was just glad not to be on the 2nd floor, where some of the guys were doing a few lines of coke. They were horrible and high, and more so now since Ricky had come back from the shooting. Eric was regretting his decision to join this stupid gang. Not like he'd have much choice, though. A year ago, he'd been approached by TJ and Ricky. They gave him 2 choices. Either start smuggling weed into school for them, or his sister would. He shook his head, trying not to think about that. He had not hesitated to agree. His grades began to slip. His friends stopped talking to him. The Warrior Kings were nothing but trash, and he wanted out. But how? If his sister knew, if she knew what he was getting into, he didn't even want to know what she'd say to him, especially not his mom and dad. What would they think? Huh? His thoughts were interrupted as he saw a strange sight. A small convoy of vans and cars were rolling up towards the parking garage. He waited a moment as he watched them and then grabbed his phone to call the boys downstairs. The car stopped and the backs opened as a few men climbed out, all wearing fine suits, hats, and a couple holding handguns. But even more frightening was the woman who stepped out of the front car. She wore shades and her long black hair was like a raven's wing. He couldn't see her eyes behind the shades, but he knew those serpentine eyes were glaring at him. Guys! Something's going on! He called into the phone. What are you talking about? Holy shit! The line went dead as there was a sound of gunshots below him. Eric dropped his phone in fear and ran for the steps to get down. This was the end. He was going to die. He would never see his dad or stepmom or little sister again. He'd die and be labeled one of these horrible warrior kings. It was a gang war and he was right in the middle of it. There was a sound of angry shouting and swearing. He heard a loud explosion and he hit the ground. Hansom's motorcycle just exploded into a fiery mass. How had they gotten in? He would have seen them sooner. It was chaos, horrible and uncoordinated, with no sign of escape.
He lay on his stomach, covering his head in fear, expecting death to claim him at any second, as there were shouts and pleas for mercy, but none came as more gunshots riddled the night. Eric didn't budge. He didn't even open his eyes to see if things had settled down. Just go away, he thought. Go away and leave me be. Line him up! The sound jolted Eric to his senses. He finally dared to open his eyes, and he saw from his hiding place as the suited men were lining up the rambling and remaining gang members. The Warrior Kings numbered about 90 or so, and now Eric felt his stomach flip when he only saw about 20 boys on their knees and up against the wall. One had pissed himself, and another was close to passing out. Eric could see littered throughout the garage bodies of punks and thugs. This group had wiped them out in barely a thought. He couldn't have been so simple, so easy. Eric slid back some and saw the woman from before. She had her eyes hidden behind her shades, and she glared at the lined-up boys. "Is this all?" she asked. "A dozen or so ran when they saw us, but we got most of them," another answered. "Let them run. They're just leaves in the wind now," the woman answered. She had a hint of an accent, but nothing that Eric knew to place. She then walked among the gangbangers, and she smirked. "The Warrior Kings, I take it? What a joke." A few of the boys snarled at her, and one even made a move to get up, but he was put down with a kick from one of the well-dressed men. "Stay down, shithead." "Before I bury every one of you, I have a question," the woman asked. "Which of you shot up that school?" There was no movement, but Eric's eyes knew to fall on Ricky. Ricky was squirming now and biting his lip. The woman was becoming impatient as she marched between them, her coat trailing some behind her as she did. She stopped and glared at Ricky, noticing how terrified he looked, and then smirked. "Do you know what kind of person walks into an innocent school full of innocent people and kills indiscriminately?" "A coward," she hissed. "Are you a coward?" "Fuck you! Grab him," the woman ordered. Two of her men ran forward and yanked him to his feet as he roared and screamed in fear and panic. "Let me go, you twisted bitch! I didn't do nothing you wouldn't! Get your hands off me, you There was a loud gunshot. Eric shut his eyes, and he couldn't watch it. One gunshot and the entire room went quiet. Oichi sneered at the now silent Ricky, who was so close to passing out, his lips were quivering. He may have been a 19-year-old, but he looked no different than a scared middle schooler. "That'll be enough of that. Answer me honestly, or I'll put a bullet between your eyes," she growled. "Were you the shooter at Lexington High School?" "What if I was?" he snapped, trying to maintain a calm exterior. "Thank you for your honesty. Hold him down." The two men kicked Ricky's legs out from under him and held him to the ground as he struggled and thrashed. Oichi walked to one of her boys and took his pistol from him. She then placed her foot on his head and aimed her gun down at him. "You killed 2 children. Children under my protection," she hissed. "And now you're going to pay for it." She fired once. Ricky screamed as a golf ball-sized hole was now left in the center of his right hand. "As you struggle to write your confession with your left hand, I want you to remember the lives you took," Oichi hissed. She then aimed low and shot him in the left ass cheek. Ricky roared in pain again and thrashed like a snake, but couldn't get up as tears of anger and humiliation streamed down his eyes. "And when you sit down to take a shit, you're going to remember that this city is under my protection. You're going to shit thinking of the opportunities and choices you shit away to get where you are now." She then handed her gun back to its owner and placed her hands in her pocket. Bless me, sorry. She placed her hands back in her pocket, kicking him over as he moaned and wailed in agony. "Knock them out, then call the police to clean up here. We're done," she snapped. She turned and walked away as her men walked to their prey and began beating them into unconsciousness, looking at Marcus, who was staring at her and the scene around him with horror and awe. "Ma'am?" "You did well tonight, Marcus. I'm sorry if what I did unnerved you." "It was amazing," he whispered. "I thought you were going to kill him." "No. Let him and his friends live with the knowledge that they might have died. That horror is the same one they left the kids at Lexington High School with. A fitting punishment." "Yes, ma'am." Oichi stopped a moment and then saw a young boy hiding on the stairway, covering his ears and eyes. She stared at him a moment, and Marcus turned also to see him. "Oh, I missed one. Don't worry, I'll—" "Kid!" Oichi shouted. The boy squeaked and looked up in terror at the woman. Yes?" "Go home," she growled. "I think your parents have supper ready." Eric stared at her as if he couldn't believe what she just said. Do I need to repeat myself? No, ma'am, I'm going, he cried, jumping up and sprinting out of the garage as fast as his legs could carry him. Oichi smirked and walked back to the cars.
Why do you let him go, man? He's probably one of the gang.
That boy? A warrior king? Oichi laughed as she walked past Marcus to her car. Tell me, Marcus, when you see a tabby cat among lions, do you assume the cat is a lion as well?
Of course not.
As we push deeper into the city, it's important we tell the predators from the prey, Oichi explained. That boy was just another victim, and I set him free. To save the city, it's just as important to help the victims as it is to subdue the predators.
Yes, ma'am, Marcus beamed, feeling himself swelling with pride as his boss. But, with all due respect, aren't you a predator yourself, ma'am?
Oichi didn't answer, but kept on walking until she was back at her car, climbing in and yawning. I'm tired, Marcus. Make sure we get this whole thing cleaned up promptly. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. He bowed gently towards the tigress, the shogun of the criminal underworld.
And that was chapter 10.
Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Give me a second to blow my nose and drink something, and then I'll read the last one. Sometimes, you just get that stuffy nose. You just got to fight through it. All right, got one more to go. I know we're going to this super late, and I apologize. This will be the last one. I just love how vicious Oichi is. That's my favorite. Okay. Going on, Shogun Chapter 11, March 12, 2019. Things were finally settling down for Oichi. This was good for the gang and Oichi's rapport with them. Those who had doubted her before were now becoming more loyal and started looking to her as a savior to their interests. With most of the downtown area under the Taiga family control, there were no true rivals for them to worry about nearby. Some of her more reckless lieutenants had come to her recommending a swift and immediate strike upon some of the outlying families and syndicates. After all, if the Tigress of New Mercia could bring several districts under her control in a few weeks, she could easily sweep the other districts, right? But to their surprise, Oichi declined and simply said they would wait. No one else saw what Oichi saw when she looked out her window at the city around her. She saw the risks. She saw the dangers present that waited for her and her organization. Too much could fall apart in a single reckless move. She'd seen that because of her father, and that had been a true lesson that Oichi would take to heart as she planned her next move. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door.
The door is open,
Oichi called back. She was standing by the den wearing a bathrobe. She was getting ready for a bath, but had paused to watch the birds playing by the pool. Why had they distracted her so? Why did the pleasantries of a spring day elate her like this? It made little sense, and she had often questioned the value of these distractions, but that did not prevent her from indulging them. Her father had said to her that she had the eyes of a child, constantly darting to the next pleasant thing that caught her eye. Oichi had never seen this as a negative thing, for children often see that which adults are blind to. What is negative is when the child chases the pleasant sight without looking to see the danger it could present. So here she stood, watching a flock of birds tweeting and playing by her pool, barely paying mind to the presence of her subordinate, Marcus. Miss Taiga? He asked. What can I do for you? She asked. Is now a bad time? You didn't come to the office today.
I'm fine, Marcus. I've just been doing a lot of thinking lately about the organization's current standing.
I have too, which is why I'm here, Marcus explained, walking towards her. There's a cartel presence just beyond our district that is willing to broker peace terms. They're even willing to establish a supply line with us.
What do they call themselves?
The Machetazo, Marcus answered.
Is that Spanish? Uchi asked.
I think it roughly translates to a strike from a machete or a large machete, ma'am, Marcus answered. They don't have the numbers here to pose a real threat, but I said I'd approach you first. If you'd like, we could wipe them out and set up our own supply lines. Our current cartel partners might feel hurt if we start working with a rival group.
No, it's fine, Luigi answered. Broker a deal with them. If If they want to offer a supply line, we can take it.
Really? That's agreeable of you, Marcus muttered.
Does something bother you? Luigi growled.
Nothing, I wonder if something's going on. You aren't showing that same fiery aggression you showed when you first began this war. I thought your goal was to rule the criminal underworld, but you've been stagnant for a little while now, ever since you defeated the warrior kings.
Oichi didn't answer at first, and then just turned her back on Marcus, walking away from the glass doors and towards her table.
Is it about that cop, ma'am?
He has nothing to do with this.
I'd say he might. Ever since you two started dating, it's...
Choose your next words very carefully, Marcus, Oichi whispered, silencing him.
Sorry, but I'm just speaking my mind.
I'm not being idle, Oichi answered. But much like you should think carefully before speaking, I must think carefully before moving. We have won many victories lately, but it is moving fast, and I can't afford to overplay my hand.
What are you afraid will happen? Marcus asked.
We've got strength now. We're better now than we've ever been. Derukugi wa utareru, he replied. I'm sorry? It's a saying my father would say. It means the nail that sticks out is the one that is hammered down. Our position and our success will not go unnoticed, and there are plenty of ways in which we can be hammered down. I will not let the hard work I've gone to go to waste.
All right, fine. Then what are we to do? Just wait for something to happen?
The best hunters miss their targets because they shoot too soon or leave their hiding place before the prey arrives. Patience is the virtue of all hunters, so we will be patient. Something will happen, and we shall pounce once the opportunity arrives. Besides, I figured we could all do with a bit of complacency.
I suppose, but even so...
Look, I'm tired. I need a bath. If there's nothing else...
Well, no, there was one more thing. You got a call this morning from a Mr. Isaac Young.
Who's that? She asked.
Well, he's the Democratic runner for mayor of New Mercia.
At this, Oichi froze. She spun around to look at Marcus, a look of surprise in her eye. And what did he want?
He wants to talk to you. He says he has a proposition, Marcus answered. He sounded urgent, though, so I figured it best to come to you directly. He, like the rest of New Mercia, has no idea who you are, so I figured it's wise not to let a politician see the head of the Tiger Clan's face just yet.
A wise decision, Oichi answered.
I imagine you'll stay away, Marcus says. I doubt getting involved in politics is a good idea for us.
Politics is often an unfortunate tool of a criminal empire, Oichi corrected. I'll call him tomorrow morning.
You'll what? Marcus asked. But it could be a trap or something else.
I'm almost certain it is, Oichi grinned. But perhaps this is the chance for the nail to cut the hammer from the workman's hands.
Ma'am?
Just go home, Marcus. I have some things to consider, and I'm already getting, what do you call them? The sensation on the skin when one is scared or excited? Chicken lumps?
Goosebumps, ma'am.
Yes, goosebumps. I'm very excited for tomorrow. Good night, Marcus.
When the next day came along, the Tiger family was pleased to see Oichi arrive and take her office seat like the conquering champion they saw her as. Marcus was waiting inside, smiling. She wore her standard suit and coat over her shoulders. She leaned back in her chair and sighed.
Call the mayor-elect, she growled.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Yes, do it, she replied.
With a defeated groan, Marcus dialed up the phone and stepped back. It rang a few times before finally a voice answered. Hello? The voice answered. It was the voice belonging to a man in his late 40s, but with a snide slickness to it that couldn't be ignored. Oichi began formulating a mental image of what this individual likely looked like.
Mr. Young, I'm head of the Tiger Syndicate. I understand you have a proposition for me.
Yes. Oh, thank you for returning my call. One moment. Let me step outside.
Oichi leaned back and listened to the sound of movement and shuffling as Isaac Young moved to a new location to have a more private area for a private conversation.
Are you still there?
Yes. What is your proposition?
I'm sure you've heard from your friend that I'm running for office in a few months, Young answered.
I heard.
Well, I'm not sure if you've seen the polls of my campaign, but frankly, it's not going too great. My opposition has a higher chance of winning, but only by a few...
Would you mind getting to the point? I don't care for politics.
Oh, yes. I see. Well, simply put, I want to take advantage of your popularity. You've earned a very good rapport with our local populace, and I'd like to pay you to support my campaign.
We're not campaigners, Oichi replied. We're a criminal syndicate. How do you expect us to help you with your campaign?
Of course, simply put, I'd like you to possibly open up some of your own properties to me. Perhaps I could have rallies outside of your gymnasium, maybe offer finances to the cause. I'm sure you've got the money to spare.
And what do we stand to gain, Young? Oichi asked. Money has no interest in me, so what do I get?
Well, I'm sure we can come up with some agreement. Or would you perhaps...
I need to think on the proposition you've shown me and consider what our organization stands to gain, Oichi replied. cutting off Young's feeble attempts to entice her.
Oh, certainly. I assure you that this will be an advantageous arrangement for you. I'll give you some...
That's enough, Mr. Young, Oichi interrupted, cutting off Young's speech. You seem to be under the false impression that you hold the cards in the situation, that we need you and not the other way around. I will call you when I've made my decision on this. You will hear from me, and then, and only then.
You can't...
Have I made myself clear, Mr. Young?
Yes, you have.
Have a good morning. Oichi then pressed the hang-up button and leaned back, letting out a long sigh. Now we wait a while.
So what do you think? Marcus asked. Do you really plan to work with this guy and help his campaign?
It could be advantageous. He'd make a fine puppet.
Puppet?
He doesn't strike me as a very intelligent or righteous man. After all, he is making deals with criminal organizations to bolster himself. I'm certain he's not a very genuine person.
If that's the case, then we shouldn't trust him.
You shouldn't trust anyone as a general rule, Oichi giggled. But no, you're right. We can't trust him. But he could be useful. If we help him reach office, he'll owe us. And having the mayor in our pocket could be very helpful to us as we expand our empire.
But you admitted he's a two-faced fool. He can't be trusted.
Of course he can't, Oichi smirked. I fully expect him to plan to backstab us.
Then why help him at all?
Because we can still make use of it. He won't dare try to turn the police on us, not when the entire community has our support over the police. Who else can he get to deal with us?
Another gang, Marcus offered.
Exactly, Oichi answered with a smile. All we have to do is play his game and wait for him to hire another syndicate to deal with us. Their arrival will put us on the defensive, but also as the victimized party, and everyone rallies around a victim.
You want him to attack you just so that you can use that chance to expand territory? Marcus gasped, realizing her end goal.
If I'm wrong, and he isn't going to betray us, we have the advantage of a foolish puppet at our disposal in office. And if I'm right, and he plans to betray us by turning a rival gang against us, then we can use that as our means to expand ourselves and remove a potential enemy without ever looking like the aggressors.
Oichi answered, leaning across her desk to grab her mug of tea. Marcus leaned against the wall of his office, soaking in the intentions of her boss. Well, that's risky, boss.
I know it is, she answered. You were right the other day, Marcus. We gain nothing by being idle. Maybe it's time to play a little risky. We have to jump on this opportunity while we can.
Well, then call him back. Say you're willing to agree to the deal.
No, not yet. We'll call him later. We can't let him believe he has any power here. He needs us, not the other way around. Let him stew a bit. He might even be desperate enough to call us back if we let him wring his hands long enough.
I'm not sure how much I like us playing politics, man, Marcus admitted, placing his hands in his pockets. Oichi sipped her tea.
Marcus, you surprise me, Oichi laughed.
Ma'am?
We run an organization that backstabs, steals, cheats, and benefits off of underhanded tactics and meticulous planning, Oichi sneered. How much closer to playing politics can you get?
And that was chapter 11.
Let me know what you guys think.
And then we'll wrap up for the night. All right, well, I think that'll wrap things up for tonight. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too. Tomorrow I go into work, and then I will be back that evening to play with Havoc. It's going to be the April Fool's event on For Honor, which will be really fun. Really looking forward to that. Tuesday I might be working. If not, we'll see what we do. Wednesday, Lark will stream. Things are going to try to go back to normal next week. But I will warn you, my schedule will be changing, and I'll let you guys know what that does. Tomorrow is also the day that my announcement video goes live to let you guys know what's going on next month. It is a lot. It is going to be a little crazy, so I pray that you guys just bear with me. But it is all coming out tomorrow. But that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I know it was a little impromptu, but it was fun. And as always, guys, I will see you in my next video. Take care.